So first question is, and this is for the group, we'll start with, we'll go Eric, Albert, and then Lisa. What does a thinking classroom look like in the elementary setting?
So, you know, like you just saw a bunch of what I think joy and thinking is. And the question was start, right?
Yeah.
Right. And those who know me, and I've been in some of your district, is whatever you do in the first 5 minutes tells kids what you value. And then what I see is review a damn homework. Okay? And that's because maybe a lot of people value it. I don't. What I value is engagement and thinking. And I think, that we need to think about those first 5 minutes every single day. That we tell kids we value thinking. We value engagement. It could be a simple task that we did today, or it could be something as simple as something that's been around since I was in grad school, although it's been more popularized today. Which one doesn't belong? But you can Google find great starter tasks. But we can't start with something that kids walk into and go, oh, I gotta do that. I gotta do 3 problems that look like last night. The do now is one of those stupid problems that I don't care less about. We have to reimagine that the first 5 minutes tells us what we value. And what do we value? We should value thinking and joy. And not homework.
And Albert?
Well, I think we covered pretty much all the ideas that I could come up with. 2 last thoughts that come to my mind are, one, if the kids ask you what is this needed for, that's too late. It's not that you cannot fix it, but if they don't see why you're doing what you're doing just because we're enjoying and we're thinking and that's what math is about, it's like almost too late. And then a second thing, which is not comfortable to say or to accept as a teacher, is that if you as a teacher are not thinking, are just like automatic pilot and just, again, another session, like going through the homework and then going exercise 1, if you're not thinking, if you're not all the time like a little bit out of your comfort zone, it's unlikely that your kids are gonna think, right? So it's like lead by example, and what do you do when you don't know what to do? Because that's what they are gonna mirror.
Well, I'm certainly not going to try to top either of these experts on what I think a thinking classroom is. But what I'm thinking about is, for at least the last decade and a half, we've all embraced the I do, we do, you do model. And it gave us as educators a really strong platform for how we structure instruction. And this flies in the face, what we're seeing today flies in the face, right, Aaron? We've been through this road together. Flies in the face of that model. So I think we have to move away from the I do, right? Yes, we do together and support, and then foster an environment where there's lots of time and opportunity for the you do. And what is it that you're doing? I think that's part of the thinking. But as an administrator, what I'm thinking to myself is, how do we, when we think about thinking classrooms, how do we as teachers have the time to foster a thinking classroom? Because as we all know, time is the greatest commodity in our day. And I know as we are piloting in Novomat, the time to have that conversation in which kids can notice and wonder, and we're allowing time for them to be curious, requires us as district leaders to build time. So the pendulum swings, right? We've created time for morning meetings and SEL, and post-COVID, we knew how important that was, and still is. But we have to think about how are we creating time in teacher schedules so that they can do what we know has to happen in the classroom.
And so I guess my second question, and none of them know my question. My second question, because coming from a district perspective, listening to teachers, listening to administrators, like what obstacles and what hurdles are we going to encounter when we're trying to do a thinking classroom? At least I think with your background with the DOE, I think you could add like a little bit here. I want to come to you first.
Yeah, don't say DOE too much because they'll start throwing their leftover Southwestern turkey out. So I'm sorry.
No, but anyway, so like with your background, like,
Yeah.
you know, there are several obstacles. Some are from the state level, some are from just locally, like in your classroom. What are some of these obstacles, and how do we overcome?
And Albert said it's probably more than a pebble, it's a rock, right? We know we have the standards. Listen, New Jersey, being an educator in New Jersey means we're naturally competitive at the leadership piece because we wait for those test scores to come out. We look at the national level to see how we did against Massachusetts. I mean, look at the names of our grants, Race to the Top. It's all very, very competitively driven. We have teacher evaluations that are tied to how kids tested in districts. So this paradigm shift of how we are changing math instruction and really developing mathematicians from the earliest grade up is at odds with often what the pressure we're feeling from the top. So I think that we've been very standards driven, and we all know that, right? We have to link our lesson plans to standards. We are constantly looking at the data, evidence statements, how is everything linked to the standards? And the data is important, right? The standards tell us in New Jersey what kids need to know and be able to do, and I think that's good. We have them broken down in math into some of the focus standards or the highlight standards and some of the additional and supporting. So that's all good. But I think we have to think about, I think what's been so important here is looking at, New Jersey did get the mathematical practices right. And when we look at abstract thinking and reasoning, all of those high levels of Bloom's, I think we need to shift our thinking and instruction there, and then that's the lens through which we teach the standards. But it is, we were having some conversation, I could hear the conversation around me about, yeah, but you know, we still have to focus on test scores. And Pat, you know, we have had this conversation, you know, Pat brought the Kool-Aid over to Lavalette from Karen Barry and Millstone, and we've all been piloting and having our teachers talk, and it does go back to, what do your benchmarks look like? Are you seeing any you know, shifts in the data? I think that we know this is the long game, and what we've been doing for the longest time isn't working for us, and it wasn't working in many of the districts I was in. And this room represents, I'm sure, representation from low performing to high performing districts and all of that in between. But I don't know that the majority of us can confidently raise our hand and say we're killing it in math right now. I certainly can't say that for Lavalette or some of the districts I've been in. So I think it's about really, really investing our time in our teachers and our students in really looking at what we did today. The collective talent that's in this room, thinking about that shift that we have to be able to bring it to the students. And that's the investment of the administration and trying to know what we have to do at the state level while knowing what's good for kids and what's in it for the long game.
I'm gonna actually send it out to the crowd to continue this conversation.
Let me just pick up on
Go
that.
ahead, and you kind of fight it out.
All right, so I want to echo the point about time. There's been a lot of research in just the past couple of years about what the best performing countries in the world and how much they spend time-wise on mathematics. We pretty much have seen in the last couple of years research start to pick 60 minutes. You need 60 minutes daily minimum in all grades. And that's absolute minimum. Starting to see that research come out. If you want to see that research, I'll be glad to send it to you. Second thing is, what else do high-performing countries do that America does not? Less curriculum. There's way too much curriculum. I argue for my 3-decade career, you're still teaching way too much math in each of the grades. All because of this god up there, some stupid state test, sorry. All right? We should still teach less. Less is more. We should sit down with districts and we should say, cut this out, cut this out, cut this out. And I get pushback. Yes, pushback. Oh, my state tests are going to go down. And I say, well, they really can't go down much lower. Come on. All right? Less is more. We can't do what higher performing countries do and not sacrifice 3 problems on the state test that the kid might not see. Death is better than this mile-wide, inch-deep curriculum that we have in America that no other country has. Right, Albert?
Just in Spain, we do generally in elementary 1 hour less and our scores are more or less the same as the US. So where is that hour that you are doing more every single week of the elementary level? Where is that going, right? And I think one of the problems might be the focus in the test, yes. I don't think that there's a trade-off between so piggybacking what we were saying here, I don't think there's a trade-off between the math practices and the math content and the standards. I agree that we should focus in the core ideas of math and maybe not go to the line of the standard. And at the end of the day, when you look at the test, the questions are always around the same topics. And if you deeply focused in those, maybe the satellite ideas of math could just come naturally at the end. Another big issue with the state testing is that it comes in May, and that means that, or late April, and that means that 1 month and a half is just for what? Like everything that is not going to be in the test. And that, as Eric was saying at the beginning, kids are not stupid. They see what we value, right? So if we value only that, that's what they are going, families and kids that's the only thing they are going to value. If we value the math practices, the math thinking, then maybe we start changing things, but it's a long game. And I don't think Spain has any lesson honestly to offer in that sense to the US. But of course, the focus in elementary on the standards and the tests is hard, yes. It's a rock in the shoe.
Questions from the audience? Yes.
For teachers who struggle to think outside the box, like myself, and want to bring more of this tangible learning into the classroom rather than using the workbook and all these questions that kids really don't care about, what resources do you have to offer for teachers like that who want to start thinking outside the box, but my brain struggles with outside the box?
I mean, I could say, of course, Innovamat is a good option, yeah. But of course, but it's funny because most of the tasks that Eric used today are part of our curriculum because the sources are similar. I mean, when we have to design a session to cover some standards, but also to develop some math practices, what we do is try to think some activities, and at the end, we go for those big sources that are out there, Cambridge University with Enrich, or Open Middle by Kaplinsky, or, well, I could list a ton of resources, but maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that the issue is the lack of resources out there. It's more the lack of time and the lack of willingness to go out of the comfort zone for most of these teachers. So the challenge that I do for them is, what is success? Let's agree on that. And then, is what you're doing driving you to that success? Because many times when you ask this question, and this is a thing that Innovamat does, is like puts a mirror in front of your face as a teacher. Sometimes what you see you don't like, and that's an opportunity for improvement. But so are we aligned with where we're going to? Because if you say that you want your kids to think and develop critical thinking skills, 21st century, whatever, but then your teaching is like rooted in tradition, I do, you do, memorization, you're not aligned. What you're doing is not aligned with your outcomes that you're expecting, and that's why the results are not like supporting what you're trying to change. So maybe the first step would be, for me, would be like put a mirror in front of those teachers and say, what do you want? What is success? And then from there start building.
So I have a huge resource on my website of hundreds of tasks. Just go ericmilo.net. But I'm going to also embarrass Leanne up here. Because Leanne, one of my former students, is now a math supervisor in Brick Township. And her website at Brick Township School is amazing of the resources. Leanne, is there a quick way to get there? Right. She's put together specific resources for elementary school teachers. They're doing an amazing job of doing the kind of thinking we want to push as we've done today. And they've done it in my professor ways, way too, generic. Hers is so pretty and beautiful, the way an elementary school teacher thinks. Hers is so much more beautiful than mine. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a drink with Leanne over here. Leanne, stand up. She's going to really be embarrassed here. Okay? All right? she's gonna make a tiny URL in the next 30 seconds and hand it out to everyone. Again, because there's so much out there, and I agree. There's so much out there, it's overwhelming. And then trying to figure out, was it good or not? Okay, is that a good problem? Is that a good way to start addition? Is that a good way to start? I don't know. So someone has to curate it. So I try to curate it, and I think Brick Township has done an amazing job of curating it too. Of course, it's a rowing grad, remember. Oh, she already made it. tinyurl.com, right? /brick math sense. Okay. Brick math sense. I don't know. I just keep thinking of bricks in the wall. Brick math sense. But it's got tinyurl.com /brick math sense. Did someone try it already?
Rob, I didn't know if you wanted to open it up for additional questions.
I'll just let you go ahead and speak.
I think that question really needs to go. It's such an important question that you ask. Like, how can I do this? I don't think outside of the box naturally. Where are the resources? Where should that question be directed? We have to start, and that's why district leaders that are here, admin, like we have to foster these conversations about what is our vision. And I will say, put blame on me, my vision in Lavalette when I got there post-COVID was to really move scores up, right? And so we have a collective district goal of 80% of our students or more on or above grade level within 5 years, okay? So it's a very quantitative, test-driven, and we were sitting I have two people from district with me, one of my teachers and one of my administrators, and we're saying, that's fine because that's part of it, but maybe that goal when we created this imagine if statement was imagine if all of our students in all of our classes could demonstrate joy and curiosity in their learning. And then as a byproduct of that, 80% of our students quantitatively could be on or above grade level. So I think it's like getting the time to have the conversations in district with the people who will help make those decisions and ask you, what do you need? I think we always have early adopters in district. That's why we bring teachers here, because they're the ones who are boots on the ground and can say, and you know who your teacher leaders are that can help drive these conversations, and they'll be your resource builders, and they'll have their websites up because they understand it. But it's a process, and in my district, they hate when I say this, but change is 3 to 5 years. So we're not gonna do this tomorrow. But this is a big and growing conversation, and we've watched, those of us that have been sort of jumped on the InnovaMat wagon, we've watched this group grow and grow and grow. And the conversations, I think collectively, we all know it's not working to a great extent. And how are we building confident and competent mathematicians that honor the mathematician within, that they all are? So we get rid of that pebble that says, I'm not good at math, right? And so maybe how do we move away from failure, and we think of it as falling, because when we fall, we just get back up, and when we fail, sometimes that's a hard stop. So it's a lot of conversation, and we've got to honor the time teachers need to be able to have these conversations that we were all fortunate enough to have today, right? Like, you don't think outside of the box. You were at my table. You were thinking outside the box during all of these activities. I was lost. But you're having good conversations around this, and that's what we as administrators need to make sure that we have time for our teachers to do. That's how you get the buy-in, right?
As a generation of teachers, we have to break the wheel. We were not taught in the way that we are. Sorry, I am a teacher. I mean, we have to break the wheel. I know it hurts, but because we were not taught this way, and we are supposed to teach in a new, which is not that new, but in a new way or a different way, I would say. So yeah, welcome to the club. Yeah, we have to break the wheel.
Questions? Please.
Okay, so my brain is spinning. How does InnovaMath foster the learning of those more diverse learners, right? Like, I'm thinking of those students who they're already, having some difficulty. So when you bring something like this into the classroom, how does it help them to also feel successful? If they're kind of, already like maybe having a hard time, right?
I would say that the first thing is that when you change the focus from the right answer to are you thinking, that at least embraces more the diversity of the classroom as a setting, as a first step, right? Then many of the activities, I would say any of the activities that we did today are low floor, high ceiling, meaning any kid can start thinking about them. Any of the activities that we did with Eric or in my session, at least you could start thinking, right? Because it was like not like a fast operation, come on, do it. No, it was like, okay, I don't know what to do. That's the fun of it, that's the math. And then let's see, right? So that's a second layer that embraces more from the very beginning. And then the third thing that I would say, and again, it's not magic. Some kids still need reinforcement. Some kids don't get it the first time or the third or the second time. It's going through the same ideas and trying to connect them. So we don't. Our approach at the beginning surprises teachers, including myself, coming from a traditional approach, because we don't do units. Like unit 1, addition, unit 2, whatever, unit 3, and at the end, unit 11 or 12 after state testing, geometry, that we don't cover, right? And we don't do it, and we think maybe next year teacher is luckier and we'll do it. Spoiler, no, right? So we don't do geometry enough, we don't do probability enough, we don't do algebraic thinking enough, and that eventually it will backfire to us in high school. So what we do is try to break down those units into what we call a spiral approach, which I understand that has some connotations that some people might feel reluctant at the beginning, including myself. But those three things together work a little better with embracing the diversity of the class. But still not, again, not a perfect solution, not magical. Not every kid will leave the first hour saying, yeah, I am a math person, I am the best. No. But still, a lot to do. But from the design, we try to embrace this. And then, of course, the resources that Manu was sharing on intervention are like the extra layer when you see that that's not working, that's not enough, then what, right? Because there might be another difficulty, a learning disability that needs to be treated differently.
Before Eric goes, I'll add to that too, just because 2 months ago, I was at Pittsburgh Public Schools. I wouldn't have left Pittsburgh Public Schools to come to something that wasn't with the diverse learner in mind. You know, okay, so, and when we did so much work, I know I'm not on the panel, I apologize. Really, it's Gerard's fault, he's the one who back there at CEO. So, no, but like, I wanted our students to talk. Like having conversations where their voices matter in the classroom is something that is high value for a diverse group of learners. Then they feel accepting, like I belong in this class. So a sense of belonging, again, with Novomat, like it's a sense of belonging. We want them to feel like they belong in the class. And how do we do that? We allow their thoughts to be heard. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second, in math? Like, you're okay with me saying this? And like, what? Like, that was huge for me. And then finally, like having these rich math tasks that every student can enter, and then like, it's all about the thinking and the process. And we're not saying, well, come on, you gotta go fast, because that's when you start to lose people and lose kids. So like, those are like my three things, and I wouldn't have left Pittsburgh Public Schools to like come to something that didn't believe that. And that was, and when we were talking and I had those conversations going into me being hired, I made it very clear that I wasn't going to come to something that wasn't that. So, because I was a massive advocate for it, If you look up something like our debate math podcast and stuff like that, we advocate pretty heavy for making sure that everybody's included. So, I just wanted to add to that before I let Eric go. Go ahead, Eric.
I just want to segue the question in a slightly different direction. As kids grow, we saw from Albert Slig about that up and down wave, about their love and hate for mathematics and learning styles. And a lot of learning styles research has been debunked now, but we still kind of hang on to it. But yeah, at the university, what do I teach? I teach kids who want to become teachers, like Leanne, okay? I've done it for 28 years. And every single first day of class, I have my elementary class, by the way, I have my high school class. The high school class, we all sit around and sing math songs. It's amazing, okay? Greatest group of kids ever. They're the geeks of the world, right? Leanne's one of them, okay? But I want to focus on the elementary class just for a second. I got 30 kids, okay, who want to all be K through 5 teachers like yourself. By the way, if you came in one day, what would you tell them? Don't answer that. All right. But first day of class, I ask them this: fill in the blank. I blank math. And what does 90% of them fill in the blank with? Every possible negative word you could possibly give. They're good with vocabulary. They don't just use hate. You know, there's abhor, detest. So I think about that when I was thinking about your question. So I follow up every semester for 28 years. Next question. Why? Okay, so play Family Feud with me. 28 years of me doing this, 2 semesters each, 56 semesters. What's the number one answer on why? I can't hear all you at once.
Okay, wait a second. I suck at it. What else?
I suck at it. Not number one.
Oh, not number one. Oh, good answer. Play Family Feud. Time test.
Not number one.
Oh, come on. Boring.
Ding, 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 ding. Number one answer by far, every semester, 56 semesters, because it's the most boring subject in the world. Trying to tie together almost everything we've done today. These kids hate it so much because it's so boring. When are we going to realize that? Okay? Yes, there are all these diverse learners in the classroom to get beat down over the head of the most boring subject in the world that they see. It's time to think about that.
Well, I would just add to that, that kind of goes back to us in higher ed too, right? How are we teaching what will be elementary generalists that have to kind of be a master of 4 content areas? How are we going to change that? And so when we talk about a paradigm shift, it's not just how are we at the school level and district level changing how we teach, but we have to get to higher ed and think about how are we teaching pre-service teachers to think about math education in a much deeper way so that they can bring it to us. You know, sometimes we have great teachers that come to us that have this love of math teaching, but oftentimes you have teachers that want to hold on to the book and read from the book because they're really an ELA person, right? And we want them to do this. So fostering time to really think about the activities, think about the why, and having leadership that has a vision of what is it that you want for all kids. Not just math, but all kids.
Departmentalize and keep your young teachers out of the faculty room.
There is a reading on the topic that I recommend to you, which is called A Mathematician's Lament, or Lament. Paul Lockhart, a brilliant mathematician from California. A Mathematician's Lament, which is him basically crying around how math education is perverting the very idea of math and why everyone hates or is like bored with math in general, right? And the answer to those kids when they say it's boring, it's okay, I'm sorry, but then you have not seen math. Period, right? And that's a problem we have as teachers.
Definitely, highly recommend. It's called The Mathematician's Lament. Mathematician's Lament by Paul Lockhart. Let me tell you, game changer. Absolute game changer. Yes.
Hi. Can you just go back to the departmentalized comment after Milou? What grade? And I'm just interested in your thoughts because there's so much that we're asking our teachers to change in how they teach reading now at K2, and now we're piling the math on top of it. And I, as a secondary person, never understood the value of K through 2 teachers. If you're in here, props to you, because you set the tone for everything, and we know that without those foundational skills and the understanding of number sense and the joy and the love, we're just screwed at higher ed. So,
Aaron, you know me forever, and I'm not always filtered.
We're all friends. We're at a bar. We're friends.
And the answer is I want to departmentalize as early as possible. I want the language arts specialist, and I want the math and science specialist as early as possible. However, the debate in America, and usually not in other countries, by the way, okay? Japan's departmentalized, okay? The debate in America is which camp do you believe in? Do you believe in the psychologists who say the 6-year-old can only handle one authority figure, needs one person to care for them all day long? Or do you believe that it's okay to have even a 6-year-old have 2 or 3 authority figures in the day? There are still many people who believe in the first, that they need to have one authority figure, even though they still go to have an art teacher, even though they still have a phys ed teacher. No, they need to have one authority figure. So where do you believe in the research here? Because it's contradictory. It's contradictory in the sense that as we departmentalize, we do seem to tend to have better teaching, however you define that. But yet the psychologists warned us that little Johnny, who just came to school, is 6 years old, can't handle 3 teachers. You know where I fall. Okay.
Of course, departmentalizing, I think, I'm not going to give my opinion on a grade level, but, I just think about what are the challenges we're facing. Yeah. But, then we're in this landscape. How do we find the teachers with the certification? Well, then it goes to the money and the training, right? So we have a lot to talk about and a lot of work to do.
The number of teachers doesn't change as you departmentalize. We're splitting. We're not adding teachers.
Yeah, and then professional development becomes
Correct.
even more important. Right. Here we go.
So, getting back to professional development, like how often, when do you give teachers professional development? Because obviously that's an important piece, but is it during the day, is it before school, after school, summer? How does that kind of roll out?
And I want to add one layer to that. And what kind? Like, is PD just for PD's sake, or what kind? So that you have a whole sequence.
All right, so PD's my jam, so I'm going to start this. So I think your professional development plan, whether it's your formal plan, your informal plan, is an expression of what you value, right? So you have to get clear on what your priorities are, because if you have 7 priorities, you have really no priorities. So you have to think about what is it that we prioritize here. So however that looks in your district right now, what Innovamat is doing with our teachers is they're having, Belle, I believe it's every other week? Every other week coaching, online coaching, in-district training, and like all good professional development, it is job embedded, it is consistent, there is a long-term vision for what that plan looks like, it's not drive-by. And I think that what we do know about good professional development is there's opportunities for coaches in the classroom to see what to model, to then see what you're doing, time alone to get feedback and to understand how your practice is shifting or not shifting. And it has to be ongoing. And so it can't be, so where do you find the time? Again, that's why I go back to how I started this. What do you value? So if your district is doing faculty meetings once a month and you're just getting a checklist of, the student council dance is Friday and this is happening, it's all the stuff you can read in an email, you've pretty much wasted 45 minutes to an hour of your professional development time. So I think you have to get creative, and I also think that you have to think about what is the financial value of using subs in your district so that teachers can have job-embedded professional development outside of in-service days. Now, with that said, that's also tough for teachers because they're out of the classroom. We've had this where teachers complain about how much time they're out of the classroom. And oftentimes when you do this and you put this big focus on professional development, you'll see a dip or maybe just flatlining like Pat talked about. That's natural. They're spending a lot of time learning and not a lot of time really expertly implementing yet. But you have to think long-term vision. What is it that we want in 5 years? And what is the portrait of this student when he graduates 5th grade, 8th grade, whatever it is that your grade band is, okay?
Most important thing to echo there is professional development has to be embedded in the classroom. There really should be no more of some expert crazy guy like me coming to you and telling you what to do. And then you go back to your classroom and doing the same old thing you've always done. If some expert's coming in and telling you what to do, you should turn to that expert and say, go do it in my classroom so I can see it. Professional development has to move to the Japanese model of lesson study. Lesson study in classrooms. No more outside experts telling you what to do. Let's go do it. We have the technology capabilities. We can camera, we can have 20 teachers watching it in another room, or they could even be in the room. It needs to be embedded in our classrooms. You can't tell me what to do. Just like we don't want you telling students what to do. We want students to learn by doing. It's professional development needs to be embedded in your classroom. Again, the teacher over here who said, I don't know the research, I don't know where to look for them. Well, I'll find them, but I'm gonna go do them in your classroom. So you watch how your kids might have some, I dare say, joy.
And Albert, can you share more about the InnovaMath approach with our PD and how we do job embedded in PD?
Absolutely, and it's funny because that's where we started. Like InnovaMath was founded by some teachers and then some people who were like more smart in the business side, let's say, or in how to build a company. But the core of the company at the very beginning, when we were like 6 or 7 people, we were teachers doing PD for the Spanish government and feeling exactly this. We went in September, did a wonderful PD, give 20 activities, left, came back in June and say, how did it go? Oh, I did this activity that day and that activity that other day, period. And now, okay, now what, right? If you don't embed everyday into everyday instruction and the learning by doing, it's really hard. It's really hard to change things. That's why we decided to create a curriculum that covered day 1, day 2, everyday instruction, with some contradictions, of course, as always, that you have to write down every single thing that you believe in. But that's number 1. So it is embedded. By reading the teaching guides, which actually my PhD is about how the teaching guides help teachers develop this deeper understanding on math. That's layer number 1. And that if you have every other week or every week somebody asking you, did you try this, did you try that, how did it went with these coaching sessions that we have with teachers, either remotely or in person. And then you have from time to time all hands big meeting with the teachers in person to do like a little more and push a little more. We try also to listen to the teachers. So last year PD offer was different from this year PD offer, and it will be different next year. We evolve. So if I'm talking to Millstone or to Upper Freehold, to quote 2 of our partners here in New Jersey, hey, what are your needs now? Oh, we need assessment. Okay, so let's do a PD on assessment. How do you want to assess? And we have changed some things together, little by little, in those districts when it comes to assessment, to, for instance, value more the mathematical practices through assessment, through grading. But then maybe after a few months, the necessity is about fluency. Okay, so let's talk about fluency. And more reactive in that sense to help teachers navigate their own interests and to make them owners of their learning process and treat the teachers the same way you would treat the kids. You want the kids to understand what they're doing, teachers the same way, right? We want the teachers to believe in what we're trying to change.
Other questions?
So how, like as in an elementary world, how much emphasis do you put on conceptual fluency versus procedural fluency? And like how much emphasis is on kids like knowing their facts versus just, do you know what I mean? Like automaticity, all that kind of stuff. That's always a struggle in my district with elementary.
Toby, you really want me to answer that?
Yeah, that's why I asked you to hear it out loud.
Well, Toby.
She wants you to say the inside part out loud.
Right. Well, but Toby knows my answer. She's another one of my former students. Wonderful teacher and student, Toby. But look, this question has been asked since the beginning of time, hasn't it? Beginning of time. I mean, I don't know. It was 1925 right now. Guarantee you someone in the audience could be going, man, I just don't know their damn facts. All right? That hasn't changed in 100 years. Okay? I started my career 30 years ago. They asked me the same thing. Okay? So why are we asking the same thing for 100 years? Okay? Where's that answer lie? Well, of course, the politically correct answer is they got to do both. They got to do both. They got to understand the concept. They got to know the facts. That's the wrong question to ask, I think. I think the correct answer to ask is how. Okay? How are we doing these things? Are we doing these things like I see in classrooms, like we did them 100 years ago still? Some stupid time test worksheet, It causes nothing but math anxiety, especially in girls. How are we doing these things is the question. Not should we be doing these things, or how much concept or how much skill. They should be doing both. There should be a balance between the both. But how are we doing them? How are we making connections between 7 times 7 and 7 times 8? I tell the story all the time with my little daughter, who's now 24, says, Dad, I don't know what 7 times 8 is. But I know 7 times 7 is 49. I'll just add 7 more. And her third grade teacher hated her for that. Because she couldn't say it in what? In 2 seconds. And I say, I don't care, you're gonna be fine. She's in medical school, 4.0, and she's fine, okay? But when do we get away from the fact that, there's a wonderful book by Kathy Seeley, I'm gonna get the title right. Faster isn't smarter. We equate speed with intelligence in mathematics. And where does that come from, Toby? How fast can you tell me your facts? It's wrong, it's been wrong for 100 years. Faster isn't smarter. Dear friend, Kathy Seeley, amazing book, okay? We are focusing on the wrong question. Focus on the how are we doing this, not what concepts or procedures are we doing. Anybody want that?
If you want fast, everyone has a calculator in their pockets. I mean, if that's the value, fast, yeah, I can do it fast if you want. But 17 times 5? Some of you remember. If you do not, but do you know how to reach that result, right? So proving the point that Eric was saying, yeah.
Where do you see the role of technology in the thinking classroom?
Good question. Keep it out there.
Technology. Okay, as an engineer, no. I think technology is as good as the teacher implementing or putting it in the hands of the kids. In our approach, we do once per week. We recommend the use of a practice app. Why? Because it allows you to correct without, I mean, where's the value? Time, right? Time. What's the value of a teacher going over a worksheet of tons of operations if a machine can calculate that and say, okay, this kid has 20 out of 30 and needs a little more time, or this kid is already mastering these facts or these automatizations, right? So sometimes the technology might help in that sense. Calculator was considered technology back in the days, and I don't think anymore is considered like a technology. Like the pencil was considered technology back in the days and not anymore. So these things, AI, that could be a topic for another conference because AI will change some of the things. But I love a sentence that I heard once by Kural Raji, who is an expert in Spain and Latin America, and who has joined us in many Enjoy Thinkings all over these years. And she said, if as a teacher you fear AI to take over your job, it means you deserve to lose your job.
I just want to twist that a little bit because we haven't mentioned this one word, I think, today, probably at all, except when we talk about large-scale assessment, state test assessment. We really haven't focused on what I think is the most important thing is small assessment, all right? Continuous assessment, but what I really think is important is daily assessment. Now, why am I saying that? Why does that question have to do with technology? Because, for 20 years or whatever, yeah, you got to give an exit ticket, you got to give an exit ticket, you got to give an exit ticket. And the exit ticket is on a piece of paper and it hits the waste scan faster than you can read it, okay? But now technology allows us to give an exit ticket every single day, 2 or 3 questions max. The data can be easily collected, easily looked at, and examined to decide what happens tomorrow. That's the role, I think, where technology helps us to quickly compile data in an easy way for us to read and decide what to do, and hold kids accountable for their learning. There are hundreds of schools I visit every year. Class just ends, bell rang, class just ends. Maybe you tried an exit ticket, but it wound up in the trash. Technology affords us every class again with 10 minutes. You get electrical shock, you pass out, kids have to do a 3-question exit ticket on their computer. You have the data. You can decide what to do tomorrow. And I want to throw out one other thing because you mentioned AI. I don't know if you're familiar, but I've seen crappy AI, the tutors, you know what kids do on AI tutors. How do you do this problem? And the tutor goes, what's the first step? And the kid goes, IDK. And the tutor goes, AI goes, well, do you have any idea what the first step is? The kid goes, IDK. And the AI tutor goes, okay, this is the first step. Do you know the second step? And the kid puts in IDK. And the AI tutor gives them the second step, and these are garbage. But there is a company that I'm starting to really like called Snorkel. And that's a little homework for you guys. No Snorkel people? Snorkel guys? Homework. Okay? That I've seen Snorkel where kids will write on their computer screen an open-ended answer. Snorkel can read it and give the kids really good feedback on their work. And that's where AI, I think, can be more useful. It can read your open-ended responses and start to give you help instead of IDK. Snorkel's not going to give you any help if you put IDK in. Snorkel's going to give you help if you go 42 plus 21 and you say that's 62 instead of 63. Snorkel's going to say, great job. Look at the ones again. What did you do there? Because Snorkel can read your work. And that's where I think AI technology can be incredibly valuable. It's not 100% great. Because a kid writes really, really sloppy, it misinterprets it. Okay? But that's where I think AI can be most helpful to us, not on tutors and things like this, if kids just put in garbage, but actually examining real work of kids. Okay?
Last question for Lisa, because then she's got a jet. What's your biggest hope for the thinking classroom in elementary classes? Your biggest hope for thinking classroom?
Well, I think we started this process 2 years ago in Lavalette, where we engaged the staff in what we call, we don't name it, it's moonshot thinking, right? And the imagine if cycle. So what is it that we imagine for our students? So within the thinking classroom, I'm thinking about, you asked about the computers, these were great answers. I think it's like moving away from all we've known and we've been doing and allowing time. What is the ideal? A thinking classroom has to have time. It has to have teachers that feel confident and competent in their own practice in order to build confident and competent mathematicians in the classroom. Feeling comfortable letting go of control. We talked about that in our district, letting go of control and being, you gave that graphic, that was awesome. The guide going up the mountain instead of the helicopter just bringing them up there. And so I think there's a constellation of ideas that have to happen. And I just urge you, if you're a teacher in here and you're not necessarily the decision maker formally, you are the decision maker, but you have to have your voice heard by your supervisors, by your administrators about all of this. So I think this is a collective movement and not asking the same old questions, right? How do we do this differently? How is it working for us? And what does the thinking classroom look like? What does success look like? And have that conversation together.
I know Lisa's gonna, yeah. Here, real quick, let's give Lisa a round of applause. And then I'll allow,
one last detail on the technology piece that I was like forgetting, but I think it connects to what we were saying, is that personalization. It's really hard, at least for me at the very beginning of my career being a teacher. I was like suffering all the day. Like if I'm like listening to one kid, what's going on with the rest? What's going on with the 29 different kids that I have there, right? So technology allows you for a while to have every kid engaged in their own level type of tasks, if the platform that you're using is able to recognize what the thinking and the level of the kid is and pose challenges according to their needs and their levels in a much more like tailored way than you could as a teacher have for 30 different kids.
Dr. Milou? Yeah, you good? Very good. Okay. This concludes our roundtable. Please give Albert and Dr. Milou a round of applause.